Hello, everyone. Welcome to another conversation to transform birth. I'm Sheila Kamara Hay of Ecstatic Birth, and I'm here today with Val McCall. Val has a really special message, and I'm so excited to introduce her to all of you because she really lives in that place that I try to bring forward in Ecstatic Birth, this place of how can you expand your sense of possibility in relationship to your births. Val is an artist, a creative type. She communicates with animals. She's very devoted to cultivating her intuition, has spent a lot of time in that. And she contacted me recently to say, you know what? Um, I want to share my birth story because this connection to the intuition, this connection to, realms that are even beyond what we can conceive of as possible, it really supported me in my births. And I want people to know that that's possible. So with that, I'm really excited to introduce you all to Val. Hi, Val.
Hi, Sheila. Thanks for
I'm
having me.
Yeah, I'm so happy that you're here. And so, let's just get right to the heart of it. When you said to me, Sheila, I really want to share my birth stories. I've had three beautiful births, but especially the third one. Like there's something here that I want people to know. Why don't we start there? What is it that you experienced that you wanted to share with people?
That's right. Yeah. Mostly what I found in the third birth was a sense of pride after giving birth to my girl. It was just such an accomplishment. And I kind of have to give you an overview of the three births so you
Yeah.
understand where I'm coming from. But my style of giving birth is rather strange because it goes very, very fast. And I have very little prompting. My body goes from just being relaxed to going into full-on birth like very quickly. So my second son was born in a car. My first son was almost born in the elevator. And so I know my body does it very, very fast. And in that second birth, I was so proud of my son and the way he came out. We were on the freeway going full speed to the
Oh my
hospital, and he
gosh.
just came out. And and I was cheering him, "Come on, you can do this!" And as we arrived at the hospital, all the nurses and everyone was lined up and clapped and cheered when we arrived. So it was a
Mm.
really fun birth, very joyful, and and so I felt really proud of him. But with this last birth, which is my baby girl, things happened differently because I decided, okay, this time I'm going to take plenty of time and I'm going to go to the hospital on time, so things aren't not so rushed. And when I got there, basically the nurses didn't really think I was in labor, but I knew my body and I insisted. I said, no, let me stay because I know this can go really fast. And so they monitored me, and after a little bit, they were like, no, listen, you're not your contractions haven't progressed. You're not in labor, and we might have to induce you. And that's when I just looked at the nurse straight in the eyes and I said, give me 20 minutes and I'll push this baby out. Give me 20 minutes. And so she sort of shrugged and brought me to the delivery room, and she left. And then as soon as she left, I called out to God, to my spiritual team. I cried out to help. And as soon as I did that, I just had violent contraction. I mean, like I went into full on labor, and my baby girl like came out right then. The nurse just had time to come in, and she saw my husband delivering my girl. So he's delivered two of
Oh,
my three babies, and they couldn't believe it. They said, "Wow, what a team!"
yeah.
And it was just so joyful and so nice for me because at that moment I trusted in my body, and I knew that I could do this, and I knew that my body was gonna be able to do it without outside help.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's so many pieces in that story that I want to pick apart because it's kind of
Yeah.
incredible. But the first thing I really want to highlight is when you were going into a hospital, you had to, transport there. And I heard you say that your labors generally were pretty quick, that you delivered
Mm.
fairly quickly. But even just that process, I know for a lot of women, when they have to move in the midst of labor, that can stall things, that can stop the labor. In your case, maybe it didn't allow you to go fully into labor by the time you arrived. And so that's, to be able to really um, be connected in the way that you describe and call on your resources in the way that you described in the hospital setting, it's really it's a challenge. So I really want to like celebrate you that you were able to do that. And then um, this place of trusting your body. So you had given birth twice before, so you kind of understood intuitively where you were at with your body. So
Yeah,
it sounds like there was a really strong connection there between you and your body, your inner realms. Like you said, I know my body. That's huge, right? There was
yeah,
the space of you were talking about like calling out for support beyond, like the physical realm, calling out, almost like a prayer to other realms to support you. And also, I heard you, I don't think it was in the third birth. In the second birth, you were saying how you were communicating with your son and saying, come on, you can do this. Like that place of there's deep connection to your body, there's deep connection to your baby, and there's deep connection to all that is. Those three places. Really, really powerful. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about those spaces. Like, how did you, these are not places that most people have been taught to connect to. These are not, a lot of the work I do in ecstatic birth is how do you connect to your body? How do you connect to your baby and bring these pieces in? But most women don't really know how to do that or how to begin doing that. So maybe you could talk a little bit about your journey with that and how you brought it into your births to break it down a bit.
absolutely. I was really fortunate because just before my first pregnancy, so my first, well, my oldest son, I had learned animal communication and I was practicing a lot with cats, dogs, pets, animal, horses, and any animal. So when I was pregnant, I almost took it as a case study. I was fascinated to see how I could develop this kind of telepathic
Mm,
conversation with my child. And
mhm,
that's also what I'd like to share today is people, of course, people are aware that a fetus will feel the mother's emotion inside a womb, or that, you might get some messages, or maybe you might get things through dreams, or, it depends on everyone, but I'm sure every mother experiences that. But
yeah,
maybe they don't know to what point it's possible to actually talk to your baby.
yeah.
Ask anything, ask the baby where it is, how it feels, why it's coming, what are his plans for this life. There's so much you can already ask when you're pregnant. It's like having a sneak preview to what's coming that no one else can have. It's like a mystery inside of you, and you're the
Mhm.
only one that can access it before anyone else. So it's really fun to be able to do that, and I love that. So I did a lot of that with the firstborn, especially. And I wrote down, it's a lot of personal information, but it helped me a lot, kind of, to feel like I was on a team and I wasn't alone,
Mhm.
especially right a few days before giving birth. I think
Mhm.
I told you about that. Suddenly I was on my own and I was feeling like a bit burdened to say, listen, I'm really the only one going through this. No one around me understands me because they can hold my hand, but I'm the one going through that. So I'm pretty alone right now. And I was in the forest just really praying for help at that moment, but I wasn't expecting anything. I was just trying to keep it together, basically.
Yeah.
And that was just one day before I gave birth. And suddenly I had a vision of my son on on a red and yellow background, and he was an adult in front of me talking to me. And he said, Mama, don't worry. You're not alone. We're gonna do this together.
Mhm.
I'll do this with you. Which I was like, "Oh, of course." It seems so obvious, but I had not thought until then that the baby also participates in this,
Yeah.
and that they're coming from a place of being able to help. They're not a helpless little fetus. They're there. There's just a full-blown soul
Mhm.
along with you, willing
Mhm.
to help you. And it was so touching to think, "Oh, wow, you're coming here to help me, actually. I hadn't
Yeah.
expected that." So that was a lovely experience that helped me a lot with that first pregnancy, that first birth, for instance.
So beautiful. And it actually
Mhm.
reminds me of, I remember when I was pregnant with my second, I had
Mhm.
had, between my first and my second, I had a really hard time conceiving and maintaining a pregnancy. I had a series of losses. And a lot of
Mhm.
that had to do with coming into alignment with my body, like learning to listen to what my body needs. And ultimately, the message that I got from my body. And that's, we're going to talk about connecting to our bodies too, because I know this is a
Yeah.
piece of your message.
Yeah.
Ultimately, the message I got from my body is I'm not ready to have a second. I'm still healing from the first. So, but when I
Mm.
did get pregnant with the second, when my body had said, yes, like I'm all in, let's do this, I got pregnant, no problem. But I remember through that pregnancy being so nervous that something was wrong, no,
Yeah.
so nervous that the baby wasn't healthy because of the losses I had had before.
Yes.
And similar to your experience, where when you were in fear, you kind of were like, and
Uh-huh.
you found the support from your baby. That was actually when I found my connection to my baby too. And I remember I would just sit there like every morning and just kind of check in on her, see how she's doing. She would reassure me. And it was such a
Right.
beautiful and tender connection, so full of love. And in the same way that you're saying, yeah, I'm the mom and I'm supporting her, but actually she was also supporting me. We were in it together. Really
Mm.
beautiful.
Definitely. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Oh, that's so sweet.
So yeah, I think that's such an important piece that for people to
Do you
know.
still feel that with her today? Like that, that's
Oh, definitely,
same. Yeah.
definitely.
Hmm.
Um, and I think, it plays into, we all know that we're here to raise our children, but truly, like, they're also here to teach us to grow. And so it goes together. It's not just something that begins in utero or in birth, but it's something that
Yeah,
can continue on, right? Um, yeah, and that's also a big, this place of like you have support in realms that you don't even realize. And how can you lean into that? How can you call that in,
exactly.
right?
Exactly. Where's your baby's soul? That's still not something that we have a clear answer on, or people might argue about it, but where is your baby's soul exactly while they're
Yeah.
in your belly, you know? And it's a beautiful thought to think, well, maybe they're in between. Well, that's kind of the way I see it. They're in between world, and part of them,
Mm,
they're in heaven, you know, they're bathed with the divine. And so through them, you kind of have like a little open door into heaven, and it's wow.
yeah, it's true. A lot
I,
of times when I work with women one-on-one and I bring them to this place of connection to their babies, a lot of times they're so overwhelmed with like the emotion, how much love
mm,
there is, like the amount of
yeah,
love in this connection and in
yeah.
in the communication with like realms bigger than we realize. Very
Absolutely.
powerful.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I can share another story of, well, that with my third girl when when I don't remember how many months pregnant I was, but doesn't matter. I was, sitting quietly. I wasn't expecting anything either. And suddenly I saw her come forth as a little ball of light, but I knew it was her. And so I had this feeling of, I just knew exactly how her energy,
Mm,
how she was, and it was so sweet. She was such a sweet soul that
mm.
like you say, that tenderness, that pure love. I started to cry, but of joy, of like, being reunited with her, and just hugged her, and it was just beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm curious, for women that are listening, I think
Mm,
this can be a space where, especially if you're feeling like nervous, anxious, and fear, this is one area that you can start to really lean into to support
yes.
you. And so, I definitely have the way that I do it, but I'm curious for you, like how did you start communicating with your babies in this way? Like what would you advise for someone who,
Yes.
is just like,
Oh,
oh, that's interesting. I hadn't really
all
thought of
right.
that. How do I do that?
Well, the way I like to do it was just, I would shrink myself. Imagine I was making myself tiny, and then I
Uh-huh.
would crawl up inside my own body into the womb. And I pictured the womb like a pond, and my
Uh-huh.
baby was floating in the pond with a lotus flowers or whatever. There's just floating in the pond, and would make myself tiny, and I would just swim right up to my baby and hang out with my baby in the water, and
Cool.
kind of just check it out and look at the baby and say, hey, what's up? How are you? How are you today? How do you feel?
Yeah.
And so this is like creative kind of visual imagination that you can do as a first step. And then you can observe what you see, because often, our body speaks metaphorically, and in
Hmm.
imagery, but these imagery lead you to certain thoughts or feelings or certain messages. It's a way of starting to receive messages. It's
Hmm.
just going up there and observing and being, or bringing forth a question and then sitting in
Yeah.
silence and, observing your baby.
Yeah.
So the first thing that's the same with animal, when you communicate with animals, is that you need to be really in the present moment. Like you
Hmm.
can't be thinking of your shopping list and
Hmm.
your chores. Like you have to have a space where you're really present. It's unconditional love, so it's heart-centered. So make sure that you can really spend time to focus and you're not rushed. So you can take the time to really listen to the answer and not rush into, your brain is, I'm, it's like left brain and right brain. It's a very
Yeah.
right brain activity. And
Yeah.
look, the left brain is the one that's quick to jump to conclusions, or it likes to be
Yeah.
in control, or fill the space with words, or talk. And the right brain is more observant, and it's actually more the intuitive side. So
Yeah.
also knowing, as an artist, you use a lot of right brain and you're comfortable in that space. That also is very helpful when you want to do these kinds of
Hmm.
communication.
Hmm.
But you don't have to be, you don't have to be an artist, everybody has both sides of the brain, and you don't even have to be conscious that what brain you're using. But I'm just explaining this as a side.
Yeah. No, I
Like
think
this is,
that's great. And I think
yeah.
it's really helpful. And
Mm,
so, I'm just kind of like translating what you're saying into my realm of like how I perceive things and how I do things. So when I hear presence, to me, so much of the work that I do is for through the body, right? And what I do with women is really bring them into their body and into the sensations of their body. And so that's really presence, is like, how can you be so present with your space, with yourself, with your feeling space? And this place of that you talked about, of just kind of like holding space, so you're not in a rush, like holding space when you ask the question, letting yourself feel. For me, it sounds like you're very visual, and for me, I'm very like a feeling person, so feeling it bubble up. And I
feeling,
think what's
yeah,
important to say is like, you literally can't mess this up. You can't do it wrong. Like everyone's going to have a different way, and it's great for you to try, but like
exactly.
feeling that place of, your connection with your baby, your love
Yeah,
for your baby. I
yeah,
will do sometimes visualizations with women where I have them visualize like their baby in their arms, they're gazing into their baby's eyes, their baby's gazing back and feeling the love flow in
really,
that way. Um, but yeah, I loved everything that you shared, and I really want to encourage those of you that are pregnant, or even if you're trying to get pregnant, this can also be a beautiful space of connecting with the soul of your baby even before you're pregnant, and getting some wisdom around, how you can prepare to receive them, how you can prepare your body, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
And I want to add just one thing also. What's important is to be free of expectations.
Mm, mm-hmm.
Open, be open to whatever's coming.
Hmm.
So you don't think it's going to come a certain way, because your baby also has his own style. And so you might be very visual, but your baby might be talking in
Yeah.
terms of feelings or in terms of words. And you're saying, I'm not getting any images. It's not working. Uh, you see what
Yeah.
I mean? Like
Yeah.
that's what I was surprised when I have these three pregnancies, is that I realized every child had their own style of talking to me.
Mm.
What I felt with the first one was different with the second and the third.
Yeah.
So you
Yeah, I love
can't,
that.
you can't have like a pre-plan or anything. It has to happen in the moment and just run with whatever's coming your way, and
Yeah.
just don't judge it as valid or not valid. Just observe it and take note.
Well said. So well said. Yeah, the other piece that I really want to ask you about is this
Mhm.
place of give me 20 minutes, right? Like you said to the nurse, give me 20 minutes. How did you develop such a deep trust in your body, in the connection with your body, that you actually knew on some level that you just needed 20 minutes? Because
Yeah,
it's one thing to have a deep connection with your body, but it's a whole other thing, especially with like physiological processes. A lot of times we feel like we don't have control over that. Like what? Right? So I'm just curious, like how did you even get to that place where you could trust that you could say to someone, just give me 20 minutes, and then trust that you had the connection or knowing? I'm not really sure. I'm
Yeah,
curious actually for
yeah.
your
The
experience. Was it like,
confidence.
was
Yeah,
it that you knew that your baby was coming within 20 minutes, or was it that you knew you could connect with your body and call it in within 20 minutes? I'm curious about all of that, whatever you
exactly.
want to
No, no,
share.
it's the second one. I exactly. I
Okay.
knew
Okay.
that, that baby, my body was able to just have this time frame because every birth had been quicker and quicker. And the first one
Wow.
had been 40 minutes, and the next one has
Yeah.
been a 15-minute ride to the hospital, and the baby was out. So
Yeah.
I knew the baby could come out that
Yeah.
fast. And I also was very, very motivated in having the birth go my way. Let's just say it
Yeah.
like that. So you're right. This is not something that's happened overnight. I've been practicing this type of communication and this relationship with my body for many years,
Hmm.
maybe about 20 years. And it's something that anyone can do. You don't have to be pregnant, or you can do it at any time. So
Hmm.
I'm happy to talk about that just for anyone that's listening that's not necessarily pregnant. But I think
Yeah, I
you can
do want
gain
you to
so
talk
much
about
from
that.
practicing that, right?
I do.
So,
I know you gave me some other examples of this like connection with your body that really, I mean, yeah, I want you to talk more about that because it's interesting.
yeah.
Like, do we really have that level of, I guess, I don't think control is the right word, but control,
Or awareness
awareness.
of how conscious, how powerful and conscious and just amazing our bodies are. They're so amazing. This is just our biggest treasure that we have here on earth is our body, and we spend so much of our time outside of it in our thoughts going after things, and we forget that this is really the only thing that's ours and the most precious thing. And I've had very interesting experience in my early 20s when I was just also sitting quietly, and suddenly my stomach talked to me, and it gave me such a full message, and it was like an external person talking to me with
Hmm.
coherent thoughts and feelings, and I was astounded because the depth of the message, it was so sweet, so touching. And I wrote down 8 pages of notes from that conversation at the time. It was a very long, long message, but basically telling me, why do you treat me like an object? Or don't you know how much I love you? And look at everything I do for you. I would give my life for you. I'm the one that's here rooting for you every single day. Everything you ask from me, I do. I will try to do it. Even if it's harming me, I'll try to do it because I would just want to please you. Who else, you know, gives you this kind of love? Is
Hmm.
this is the this is the highest love. It's amazing, and we just don't realize it enough. We don't honor it because we don't know. Basically, most people don't, maybe haven't heard or haven't experienced it, but I was fortunate to experience that. And after that, I had a few years later, I had an accident where I had some cervicals come out of place, and I met a wonderful lady called Sharon Lertzer, who I was terrified of going to a chiropractor because I didn't want to be cracked back into place. I didn't know what to do. But as soon as I saw her, just by looking at me, she described where what accident I had had, where the damage was, and she just like she had X-rays in her eyes. She didn't even touch me, and she had me lie down and talk about my feelings. And at some point, she said, "There you go. It's fixed, and it's back into place." And I went, "Oh, you're right." And I was amazed. So I was sold for life. Now she became like my go-to person because she showed me how any issue in your body, if you take the time to talk to it and have a look at it, a lot of the time, it it just needs to be heard. And
Hmm.
it's holding a lesson or something that you need to learn. And as soon as it's doing that you this favor, and as soon as you see it and you realize it and you find the way to go through it, to transcend it, not stay in that emotion, then
Right.
the issue goes away on its own. That's been my experience with her,
Okay.
fortunately, for almost all of the times I've seen her. And she also encouraged me to do that on my own, and not to look on the outside for answers or to go, but really take the time and do it myself, to empower myself and say, no, you can do it. Try it on your own. So we've been working together for 20 years. And I've also now, I also try to kind of fix myself, quote unquote, or if something's happening, this is the first thing I do is I pause and I really listen to my body to try to understand what's happening. And
Mhm.
if I can't get it, then I go and see her, and she helps me kind of dig through the weeds.
Yeah, so I hear it's actually a very similar process to what we were talking about with your
Mm,
baby. This
yeah,
a similar
yeah,
space of like being so present, connecting with so much love, being kind of in that
yeah,
receptive energy. Yeah.
exactly. And I wanted to add one thing is that, sometimes healing is not instant. Sometimes it's a journey. And sometimes it takes a while because maybe you need to meet someone else through that journey, or there's more things so
Yeah.
you don't have to expect or feel bad if you're not managing to heal yourself right away. That's not the message I want to bring today.
Yeah.
Or this sense of guilt that, oh, I'm sick because I've done something wrong. That's not what it's about. It's about, because any message that's guilt is not from your body. It has to be something that lifts you up, and it has to be something that frees you of a false conclusion or something that was kind of, hindering you in life. Your
Yeah.
body wants to teach you how to let go of that, and that's often it does that through, well, sometimes diseases or accidents, or
Right.
different ways. But it's never about feeling guilty if you have an
Yeah.
issue in your body. It's rather than guilt, it's an opportunity for you to go deeper into your own understanding.
Yeah, I love that. That's really beautiful. And so, just to tie it back into that birth experience,
Hmm.
you had been kind of cultivating this type of relationship with your body for a
Yeah.
while. So when it
Yes.
came into that birth, you dropped in, you were present, you were able to kind of have that communication and get some guidance from your body, or was it really just a request?
Oh, I was just not even guidance. It was just, we're gonna do this. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And then the
It was,
third piece that I heard you talk about. So we touched on baby, we touched on body, and then the
mm,
third piece is like realms of support, even beyond, people might
yes,
believe in God, the divine, all that is, the
yes.
universe, but realms of support that maybe we can't even conceive of, maybe that, we haven't necessarily turned to. So I'd love for you to speak about that a little bit.
Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah. I I always think the first thing I think of when someone gives birth is that there's a lot of people in the room, because that
Yeah.
person is bringing, maybe a few angels, or maybe they're bringing their ancestors, or
Yeah.
maybe their guides, or so that person's bringing their team. Then the baby's bringing its own team.
Mm,
Then maybe the husband is bringing the team. Maybe the nurses around are bringing their team. So when you start to add these up, the room might be packed. So
mm, mm.
all of this support, of course, things, mostly need to go well. There's a lot of people around just rooting, and not only people, as I've told you,
Yeah.
um, all kinds of, beings or energies or that are around to help you. And of course, divine love, the strongest
Yeah.
of all.
It
Hmm.
makes me think of, I know in a lot of like traditions, birth is a time of prayer. And because the woman's body, it's like the portal is wide open. And
Yeah.
so, you're so connected to realms that maybe you're not even aware of on a day-to-day basis. So, um, yeah, so that's available. And so, how did you talk a little bit more about your experience with that, what that was like for you, how it supported you in your birth?
So in this last birth, that was also why I was the most happy or proud of, because I really felt, I not only knew it, because you can consciously know something, but I really felt this presence and felt this instant help, this
Mm,
um this kind of teamwork that was bigger than just me and my baby. And I think I've told you, I do a lot of work with orcas. I communicate with them to learn about how they raise their babies, and how what kind of family they have and what they do. So that's orcas are part of my team, for instance. And and other animals, but I felt them around through that birth, and that was really helpful. And what I did, I can tell you what I did to prepare before the birth, because that's also part of what happened. I think it's got a big part to do with it. Is I usually, this is kind of how I deal with my emotions in general in life, is I draw my feelings. It helps me kind of settle if I have too many, if I'm unbalanced or I just draw. I've always referred to drawing. So I draw for the births. I've mostly drawn my outcomes, what I was hoping for, my prayer in a way. My drawing is my prayer. And so for this baby, I really focused on a soft landing. That was the word I had in my mind. I really wanted a soft landing for her and for
Mhm.
me, kind of
Mhm.
a soft, gentle birth. So I drew myself and her in the clouds, and her with a little parachute, or and her drifting down to earth. I made all these different like images just to, yeah, just to symbolize what I was hoping for. But at the same time, I was very aware of all mothers in the world and all babies, who were about to be born. Because when you're pregnant, it's a good moment to connect with
Yeah.
everybody that's in the same situation and to sense your collective prayer. I think it's a very powerful moment for that. So I like to do that. But this time I especially did it for orcas because I had a sense that, they're having a tough time in the waters. They're not having a tough time, but the some orcas are in contaminated waters and maybe their babies are a bit sick. So but they're okay. They're happy. They're healthy. But I was thinking of them a lot. So I was also drawing for orcas and making like drawings of orcas like sliding down slides, being birthed easily, happily. I was drawing my babies down a slide, going wee, all this kind of imagery. And when my baby came out, it makes total sense to me now. But when she came out, she was born a mermaid birth, and
Mm.
it's what they call a veil birth. So it's the baby's in the amniotic sac,
Yeah.
fluid, and it's intact. And then I say it's a piñata birth because the nurses get to open it and pull the baby out, and it's kind of like a party feeling. I saw the nurses; they were like kind of excited about it. It must be fun for a nurse to go woo and get a baby out. So I had this kind of very aquatic birth, you know, a
Yeah.
mermaid, like this aquatic baby coming through when I had been drawing so much and focusing so much on orcas and just thinking of the aquatic element. I had not thought of the mermaid birth. I didn't even know. I don't think I even knew what a mermaid birth was, but now it makes perfect sense that that's what happened.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's so many elements that I want to highlight there. But overwhelmingly, like what I'm feeling hearing you speak is when I think about you drawing these images and I think about your body and I think about how that must have felt, it must have felt very expansive. It must have felt
Yeah,
really good. And especially because I think I heard you say, when you were feeling off, you especially did this. So when you were feeling kind of, I'm going to translate into the terms that I'm used to using in my world, like when you were feeling contracted, this was your way of like coming back into flow, into
yeah,
connection, into feeling like all the support around you, into your state of receptivity. Really, really beautiful.
absolutely. And I wanted to add, you don't have to be a professional, painter or you're good at drawing to do
Mhm.
that.
Mhm.
You can just draw a symbol. It doesn't even need to look like anything. As long as you attach the meaning to it, you can do that for yourself. Or you can just go out. I do that as well. You can go out in the forest, sit down on the ground, and take some sticks and some rocks and make a little diagram, like a little abstract figure that for you holds the meaning that you want it to have, and then just kind of look at it and contemplate it. And when I do that, I always find my emotion shifts, and I when I leave, I feel completely different, and I'm lighter. I'm unburdened. So that's a very easy way. If you don't want to take, if you don't
Yeah,
like drawing, or you can just use sticks and rocks and do anything on the ground like a little
right.
kid.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you so much. I feel like I could ask you a million more questions and we could talk
Yeah.
forever, but uh, in this space before we close out, is there anything that you haven't shared that you feel like is really important that you want to presence?
Yes, I received a message from a whale when I was pregnant with my second son, and it's a mother whale. It's a specific whale that I was talking to that's in the Mediterranean Sea with her son and with her baby. And at the time, I was really afraid of many different things as can happen. So I asked the whale, how did you give birth so peacefully and so, so trustingly? Because if you think about it, or when I think about it, giving birth in the wide open ocean does not feel safe no, for
Yeah.
me. Most animals tend to find like a little place to hide to give birth, but when you're a whale, where do you go? You're just giant and you're just like floating there in the water. How how do you feel safe through the process? Because I had that feeling of calmness and security, and just that's what the feeling I get from whales is, just this peace and this total calm. And so she gave me a really lovely message, and I'd like to share that with your viewers. So, and it surprised me a lot. She said, consider the atmospheric pressure, the pressure that's all around you, because you're an earth dweller. You're so used to it that you don't even notice this pressure that's everywhere. But it's actually what's holding your atoms together in your form is this atmospheric pressure. And if you were to go down to the depth of the ocean where we live, of course you feel like humans like feel such a strong pressure that they need to adapt and go very gradually, and then they're much more aware of it. But when you're up on the land, you never think about it. And she said this pressure is the infinite love that surrounds you and is holding you and supporting you. She said if you look around you, and especially in the ocean, there's much more water than there's stuff like round. Everything is water.
Mm.
And all of this space is infinite love that's supporting me. So of course I'm going to give birth peacefully and calmly, because I'm fully supported.
Mm.
And so I paused and I looked around me, and I thought it's true. On land, it's the same thing. We have stuff, we have the ground, the trees, but most of what's around us is air. It's empty. So if you stop and you think all of this air is actually infinite love, it's so much greater than you, isn't it? And then you're going to get a sense that yes, you're fully supported, you're fully held by love. So trust in this love, no matter what situation you're in.
Oh my
This is
gosh.
the most. It's
Wow.
so
So, I mean, I feel like we could use that all the time, not just in birth, right? This feeling of we are so held and surrounded by this infinite.
yeah,
What a gift.
yeah. And we think we have a certain form, but we don't. I never thought that I was actually being contained, that my atoms were being held from the outside. I thought it was
Mhm.
all me and my shell, and actually no, I'm being held from the outside by love.
Mm. Wow.
So that's
Really, really beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that with us. I mean, I feel like my own body reorganizing as I take that in. And thank you for sharing with us, your birth experiences and all the different journeys you've taken. It's really very powerful. And I hope, for everyone that's listening, watching, I hope it really expands your sense of possibility. We live, I feel like in our world culture, kind of in a very narrow mindset. And what I really hope to do in this work, and I know what you're here to do also, Val, is to expand that. Birth doesn't just have to look this way. And we're not, we are talking about birth, but we're also talking about life. We're also talking about our relationships with our bodies, our children as they grow, our relationship with the planet. There's a lot of different layers here. And so I'm really grateful to you for bringing all of this forward and for sharing it with us. And tell us, for people, if they want to get in touch with you or if they want to learn more about you and your work, how can they do that?
well, I think you're going to include the link to my website below. So you
Yeah,
can
of
go to
course.
my website, you can send me an email, or you can also go to Amazon and have a look at my books. I write children's books. I do coloring books for of the countryside, a lot of plants, and I also write fantasy traveling fiction for teenagers. That's the latest project that I've done. So if you could just have a look at my work, leave me a review on Amazon, I super appreciate that.
Awesome. Yeah, and I will definitely drop those links into below the video so that
Excellent.
you can access that. All right.
Thank
Well,
you.
thank you so much, Val. I really, really appreciate you coming and sharing, you know, your journey is really beautiful.
Thank you, Sheila, and keep up. Yeah, thank you.
All right. Bye, everyone.